The alien world of Ravax was once green and peaceful, filled with tall crystal trees that shined under the twin suns. Rivers ran clean, animals moved freely, and families lived without fear. But everything changed when the storms came. At first, people thought they were normal seasonal rains. Then they noticed the clouds never left. The winds grew stronger, the oceans rose higher, and soon the storms became a permanent part of life. Day by day, the water swallowed more land. Entire villages disappeared under the rising sea. Homes that had stood for generations were now deep beneath the waves. The people of Ravax tried to fight the floods by building walls and floating shelters, but nothing could stop the endless storms. The world was drowning, and hope was drowning with it. In the middle of this terrible chaos, an alien mother named Sarah held her small child, Lumo, close against her chest. She moved through knee-high water, stepping over broken pieces of their old home. Lumo was only 4 years old, with soft silver skin and bright blue eyes that always sparkled with curiosity. But today, his eyes were filled with fear. "Mother, is the water going to take us too?" he asked in a trembling voice. Sarah brushed her hand gently across his hair. "Not if I can help it," she whispered, trying to sound strong even though she felt weak. Her heart was heavy, and her steps were slow, but she refused to give up. She had already lost their house to the storm. She would not lose her child. The sky above them was dark and angry. Lightning flashed across the clouds, followed by long rolls of thunder. The air smelled of salt and smoke. Every few minutes, a loud crash echoed as another building collapsed somewhere behind them. Ravax was dying, and it was happening fast. Sarah's feet moved through the cold water as she searched for anything that could help them survive. Maybe a floating platform, an empty storage crate, or even a rescue group. But the only things she saw were broken roofs, shattered walls, and abandoned tools drifting in the water. The storm had taken almost everything. She remembered the evacuation announcement from earlier that day. Only one large transport ship was left. The leaders had promised to take as many people as possible, but when Sarah arrived with Lumo, the ship was already full. The guards pushed her back, shouting that there was no more space. She begged, she cried, she pleaded for her child, but the doors closed anyway. The ship took off, leaving her and many others behind on the ruined planet. The memory still burned painfully in her chest. She felt abandoned, betrayed by the very people she trusted. They had been forced to survive alone on a world that no longer wanted to support life. Lumo clung to her tightly as another wave splashed against their legs. "Mama, I'm scared." Sarah kneeled down to hold him properly. Rain poured over them, soaking their bodies, but she didn't care. She needed him to feel safe, even for a moment. "I know, my little one," she said softly. "I'm scared too. But we're together, and as long as we stay together, we will keep trying." Lumo rested his head on her shoulder. She rose again and kept walking. The water was now reaching her waist. She needed to find higher ground, but there wasn't much left. Only a few tall buildings remained standing, and even they shook under the force of the storm. As she climbed through the water, she reached what used to be a tall communication tower. Most of the lower floors were flooded and broken, but part of the upper structure was still above the water. She climbed onto a floating metal panel and then pulled herself up until she reached a tilted platform halfway up the tower. With great effort, she lifted Lumo onto it. He shivered in the cold wind. Sarah wrapped her arms around him and tried to block the rain with her body. Hours passed slowly. The storm only grew stronger. The tower creaked and bent as wild waves crashed against it. Sarah looked around desperately, but no ships came. No rescue teams. No signals in the sky. Just darkness, water, and the sound of a world falling apart. Lumo's tiny voice broke the silence. "Mama, will the suns ever come back?" Sarah swallowed hard. She wanted to give him hope, but she didn't want to lie. So she answered gently, "I don't know, but we will keep waiting. Someone might come." She looked at the sky again. The heavy clouds seemed endless. The rain poured without pause. But Sarah refused to close her eyes. As long as Lumo was alive, she would fight. Minutes turned into hours. Water rose higher and higher, reaching the edges of the platform. Sarah held Lumo close, whispering calming words into his ear. She was exhausted. Her legs trembled. Her arms ached. But she stayed strong. Just when she felt the tower starting to tilt dangerously, something in the sky caught her attention, a small light, faint at first, but growing brighter. Sarah narrowed her eyes. The light moved, cutting through the storm clouds like a silver blade. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't debris. It was a ship. Her heart jumped. Someone was coming. Someone had answered the distress beacon. She tightened her hold on Lumo and whispered, "Look, my child, hope is coming." The cruiser descended lower, its engines glowing through the rain. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah allowed herself to believe they might survive. The light in the sky grew brighter as the cruiser pushed through the dark clouds. Sarah blinked away the rain and stared, her heart beating faster with every second. She had waited for hours with Lumo in her arms, unsure if anyone would ever come. Now, finally, there was a chance, a small hope shining through the storm. But her fear didn't disappear. She knew that Ravax's distress signals were old and weak. Most ships ignored them. Some ships even hunted survivors, stealing supplies from the desperate. She didn't know what kind of ship this was. She didn't know if the people inside were kind or cruel. Still, she prayed silently. Please, please be someone good. As the ship lowered, the waves grew stronger. The tower beneath Sarah groaned loudly, metal bending under the pressure. Lumo hid his face in her shoulder. "Is it a monster ship?" he whispered. "No," Sarah answered softly, even though she wasn't sure. "It's someone coming to help." The cruiser finally stopped above the crashing waves. Its engines hummed loudly, fighting the wind. A bright beam of light shone down on Sarah and Lumo, almost blinding them. The ship hovered dangerously close to the leaning tower. One wrong move and both the tower and the ship would fall. Sarah lifted her free hand and waved slowly. Inside the cruiser, a human pilot named Captain Aaron Holt watched the radar screen. His eyes widened when he saw two clear life signs. "There," he whispered. "Two survivors." He wasn't supposed to take rescue missions. His job was simple: patrol nearby star routes, respond to merchant emergencies, and scan for illegal activities. But when he picked up the weak distress signal from Ravax, his instincts told him to follow it. He didn't know why. He just felt that someone needed help. Now, looking through the rain-covered glass, he saw a mother and child clinging to a half-broken tower, minutes away from sinking. Aaron didn't hesitate. He opened the side doors of the cruiser and pulled down the metal rescue ladder. The wind fought him, and the ship shook violently. The computer warned him again and again that the area was unstable. But Aaron ignored it. "Sarah," he shouted through the speaker system, reading her name from the distress data. "I'm here to help. Hold on to your child and get ready. You need to jump." Sarah froze. A human. Of all things, a human had come. Her people had spent years telling stories about humans, how dangerous they were, how they destroyed worlds, how they were selfish and violent. But the voice coming from the cruiser didn't sound cruel. It sounded worried, sincere, brave. The tower shook again, harder this time. A huge wave crashed into it, sending cold water up to Sarah's knees. Lumo cried and grabbed her clothes tightly. "Mother, the tower is falling." "I know," she said, trying to stay calm. She looked at the ship again. The human was standing at the open door, holding onto the edge of the cruiser with one hand, reaching out with the other, almost as if he could pull her from this distance. His eyes met hers for a brief second. They weren't the eyes of a monster. They were the eyes of someone who cared. Another wave crashed. The tower tilted sharply. Sarah nearly lost her balance. If she stayed any longer, she and Lumo would be swallowed by the sea. She took a deep breath. This was the moment. The moment she had to choose whether to trust a human stranger or accept death. She held Lumo tightly. "It's time," she whispered. Lumo's eyes widened. "Mama, I'm scared." I know, my love. But we're going to be brave together. She stepped toward the edge of the platform. Rain pounded her skin. Wind pushed against her body. The tower groaned beneath her feet. Aaron leaned forward and shouted again. Jump. I'll catch you. Sarah looked down at the swirling water below. Then she looked up at the open door of the cruiser, at the human who hadn't left them behind. Unlike her own people. She made her decision. With one final breath, she leapt. The world blurred around her. She felt the wind rush past her ears. Lumo screamed in fear and buried his face against her. For a moment, she felt weightless, falling between life and death. Then strong arms caught her. Aaron pulled her and Lumo into the cruiser with all the strength he had. The ship tilted dangerously, engines whining as the sudden weight shifted its balance. Alarms blared. The tower below them finally collapsed with a deafening crash. But they were inside. Safe. Breathing hard, Aaron gently lowered Sarah and Lumo onto the floor. He shut the doors quickly, sealing out the storm. Water dripped from their clothes and formed small puddles on the metal floor. Lumo shook uncontrollably, but Aaron wrapped a warm blanket around him. Sarah clutched her son and stared at Aaron with disbelief. You saved us, she whispered. Aaron smiled softly, wiping rain from his face. Of course I did. No one deserves to die out there. Sarah blinked. Her own people had abandoned her. But a human had risked everything to save her and her child. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside the cruiser, a new hope began to grow. Inside the cruiser, the air was warmer, but Sarah still trembled. Her soaked clothes clung to her skin, and her chest rose and fell quickly as she held Lumo close. The child buried his face in her shoulder, still shaking from fear and cold. His tiny hands gripped her tightly, as if letting go meant falling back into the endless storm outside. Captain Aaron Holt closed the door fully and double-checked the seals before turning back to them. His dark hair was dripping wet from leaning outside the ship, but his eyes were bright and steady. He knelt down so he wouldn't tower over them. Are either of you hurt? He asked gently. Sarah opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. She wasn't injured, but she felt overwhelmed by fear, by shock, by exhaustion, and by the strange kindness of a human she had been raised to distrust. Aaron didn't rush her. He simply reached behind him and pulled out another blanket from the emergency kit. He wrapped it around Sarah without touching her, making sure she felt warmth but not forced contact. Only then did Sarah find her voice. We were not hurt, she whispered. Just cold. And tired. Aaron nodded. You're safe now. I promise. The words sounded strange to her. Her own people had promised safety once, and then left her behind. But when Aaron said it, she felt something different. Something real. He stood up and tapped a button on the wall. The cruiser's heating system blew warm air into the cabin. Soft lights replaced the harsh red emergency glow. The ship felt alive, safe, almost peaceful, like a small island in the middle of a violent sea. Lumo peeked over his mother's shoulder. His large blue eyes studied Aaron carefully. Are you a human? Lumo asked in a small, hesitant voice. Aaron smiled. Yeah. And you're Lumo, right? Lumo gasped. How do you know my name? Aaron pointed to the console. Your mother's distress signal had your names. I followed it. Sarah looked down, embarrassed. I didn't think anyone would respond. The signal was weak. It was all we had. It was enough, Aaron said firmly. I heard it, and I wasn't going to ignore it. Sarah stared at him, surprised again. She had heard terrible stories of humans, stories of violence, greed, and conquest. But standing in front of her was a man who risked his life just to pull two strangers from a collapsing tower. Maybe the stories weren't the whole truth. Maybe she had never met the right kind of human. Another loud crack of thunder shook the ship. Lumo grabbed his mother and whimpered. Aaron took 2 steps towards the cockpit. I need to stabilize the cruiser, he said. The storm is rough, and this planet is falling apart. Sarah's eyes widened. Falling apart? Aaron nodded, his face becoming serious. Before landing, My scanners detected massive tectonic movement beneath the oceans. This planet's core is unstable. The storms aren't just weather. They're part of a bigger collapse. Sarah's heart tightened. You mean, Ravax is dying? Aaron didn't want to frighten her, but he also didn't want to lie. I think so. Sarah hugged Lumo tighter. She always feared the storms would never end, but hearing that their whole world was collapsing crushed her. Everything she knew, her friends, her neighbors, her memories, was all sinking beneath the waves. Aaron placed a hand gently on the wall beside her, close, but not touching. I'm sorry, he said. I wish I had come sooner. Sarah shook her head weakly. You came. That's what matters. Lumo looked up. Are there more ships coming? Will they save the others? Aaron hesitated. Sarah noticed the pause. Her eyes filled with worry. What is it? Aaron finally spoke. I ran a scan earlier, your people evacuated. I didn't detect any other ships in the area. The truth hit Sarah like a blow to the chest. She had hoped, deep down, that maybe someone else had survived. That maybe the transport ship would return. But no one came back for them. Her people left, and they never looked back. Lumo didn't understand the full meaning, but he felt his mother tense. He reached up and touched her cheek softly. Mama, we still have each other. Sarah kissed the top of his head.
Yes.
Always. Aaron watched quietly. He didn't interrupt. After a moment, he pointed to the seats near the cockpit. You can sit there while I get the ship steady, he said. It's safer. Sarah stood slowly. Her legs were weak, but she forced herself to walk. Aaron helped Lumo climb into one of the seats and strapped him in gently. Then he offered the other seat to Sarah. She hesitated only a moment before sitting down. Aaron moved into the pilot's seat and began working fast, adjusting the stabilizers, boosting the anti-drift thrusters, and recalibrating the engines. The ship shook violently at first, but slowly, the motion calmed. Finally, the cruiser hovered smoothly above the roaring ocean. Lumo stared in awe at the glowing screens and buttons. Human ships are so cool. Aaron chuckled softly. Glad you think so. Sarah watched Aaron's hands as he worked. He was focused, steady, and confident. There was no fear in his movements, even while flying above a dying world. She felt something unexpected inside her chest.
Trust.
A feeling she thought she'd never give a human. Just when the ship stabilized fully, an alarm beeped sharply. Aaron frowned. That's not good. Sarah leaned forward. What is it now? Aaron exhaled slowly. The planet's core is cracking. We need to leave.
Now.
Sarah swallowed hard. Their rescue had just begun, and the danger was far from over. Aaron stared at the blinking red warning on the screen. The sound was sharp and constant, like a heartbeat racing out of control. He tapped a few buttons quickly, bringing up a detailed map of Ravax's unstable core. The shifting lines and bright red cracks told him everything he needed to know, and none of it was good. The core is splitting faster than I thought, Aaron said, keeping his voice firm. We don't have much time. Sarah swallowed hard and held Lumo's hand tightly. Through the cockpit window, she could see the ocean churning violently, waves rising higher than towers. Even from above, the storm looked angry, as if the planet itself was crying out in pain. Can your ship escape in time? She asked. Aaron hesitated just a moment. Only a second, but long enough for Sarah to notice. My cruiser is small, he said. Fast, but sensitive to heavy turbulence. If the atmosphere collapses too quickly, flying through it will be dangerous. Lumo's eyes widened. Dangerous like falling? Aaron turned in his seat and gave the child a small, reassuring smile. Dangerous like a very bumpy ride. But I'll do everything I can to keep you safe. That's a promise. Sarah studied him. His face was calm, but she could see the strain behind his eyes. He wasn't lying. He wasn't pretending. He was genuinely worried, not for himself, but for them. That realization warmed her chest more than the heating system could. The cruiser shook again, harder this time. A deep rumble echoed through the hull as the planet below shifted. Aaron tightened his grip on the steering controls. We need to gain altitude fast, he said. The air down here is too unstable. He pushed the thrusters forward. The ship rose sharply, engines roaring against the heavy winds. Lightning flashed all around, thick and bright like white fire. Sarah clutched Lumo tightly as the cruiser jolted left and right. For a moment, it felt like the storm was trying to pull them back down. Sarah closed her eyes. Her voice was quiet. Please let us escape. Aaron heard her. He didn't speak, but something inside him hardened with determination. He would not let this mother and child die. Not after he risked everything to reach them. Not after seeing the fear in Lumo's eyes. Not after seeing the hopeless exhaustion in Sarah's. He adjusted the controls again, forcing the cruiser upward through the thick clouds. Turbulence hit the ship like fists. The sensors beeped, warning him that the atmosphere was collapsing in patches. Come on, Aaron muttered under his breath. Hold together. The ship continued to climb, though slowly. But then, a massive shockwave shot across the sky. It hit the cruiser like a wall. The ship jerked violently. Sarah screamed. Lumo cried out in terror. Aaron's chair slid slightly, alarms flashing red all over the cockpit. Brace yourselves, he shouted. The cruiser spun halfway to the side before Aaron stabilized it. Sparks flew from one of the panels. The left engine coughed loudly, then fell silent for 2 seconds before roaring back to life. When the shaking slowed, Sarah opened her eyes again, panting. What was that? She whispered. Aaron stared at the sensor screen grimly. The planet's crust just cracked in a massive line. It released a shockwave through the atmosphere. Lumo clung to his mother. Are we going to fall? Aaron shook his head firmly.
No.
I won't let that happen. He meant every word. Sarah believed him. But the next scan brought even worse news. Aaron's voice dropped to a tight whisper. The upper atmosphere is destabilizing. If we go any higher too quickly, the ship might break apart. Sarah's heart pounded. So, what do? Aaron took a deep breath. We climb slower, but that means staying in the danger zone longer. The planet could erupt at any moment. It was a terrible choice. Fast escape equals possible destruction. Slow escape equals possible death by explosion. Sarah looked at Aaron, panic rising in her voice. Then why are we climbing slowly? Aaron turned toward her, his gaze steady. Because if the ship breaks apart, we all die instantly. But if we take our time and push the engines carefully, we have a chance. Lumo stared at Aaron with trembling lips. Are you scared? Aaron's expression softened. Yes, he said honestly. I'm very scared. But I'm also a pilot. And pilots fly scared all the time. Lumo blinked. Really? Aaron nodded. Really? Being scared means you're alive. And being alive means you can keep trying. Sarah felt her throat tighten. This human, this stranger, was risking everything for them. He didn't have to. He could have flown away when he saw the storm. But he didn't. A sudden loud crack echoed from below. Through the window, a bright red glow appeared deep in the ocean, spreading like fire under the water. Aaron's face went pale. That's the mantle breaking through. The planet is minutes from erupting. He gripped the controls. No more slow climb, he said. Hold on tight. This is going to be rough. Sarah wrapped both arms around Lumo. The child pressed his head against her chest. She whispered in his ear, We will make it. Aaron will save us. And she believed it. Not because she had no choice, but because she had seen the truth in his actions. Aaron pushed the thrusters to maximum. The cruiser roared upward, cutting through the dying atmosphere. The ship rattled violently, the engines howling as they fought against the collapsing air. The storm screamed around them. The glow below grew brighter. The world beneath them cracked open. Sarah closed her eyes and held Lumo tightly. Aaron focused on the sky, on the stars just barely visible through the chaos. Come on, he whispered. Just a little higher. Because if they didn't reach space soon, Ravax would take them with it. Daniel and Lyra walked for hours through the quiet forest, leaving behind the settlement that had rejected her. The air was cool, and the sky above them glowed with 2 pale moons. Lyra kept looking back, unsure if someone would follow them, but Daniel walked calmly, as if he had done this 100 times. His footsteps were steady. His presence alone made her feel safe. After a while, Lyra finally asked the question she had been holding inside her chest. Why did you help me?
You don't even know me.
Daniel smiled gently. I don't need to know everything about a person to help them, he replied. Sometimes you can see truth in someone's eyes. And I saw yours. You weren't weak. You were hurt. Lyra lowered her gaze. No one had ever spoken about her like that. Everyone in her clan always said she was useless, broken, a burden. Hearing these words now felt strange, warm, but confusing. They reached a small clearing where Daniel began setting up camp. He moved quickly and efficiently, building a simple shelter and lighting a small fire. Lyra watched him closely. Humans and her kind worked differently, but he moved with a careful patience she had never seen before. You can rest, he said, noticing her tired stare. I'll keep guard. Lyra shook her head. I want to help. Daniel nodded. Then gather some dry branches. Just enough to keep the fire alive tonight. It was a small task, but it made her feel important. She ran into the nearby bushes and returned with an armful of branches. Daniel smiled. Perfect. For the first time in her life, someone acknowledged her effort. They ate a simple meal, some dried fruit and roasted roots. Lyra had eaten these before, but tonight the food tasted better. Maybe it was the fire. Maybe it was Daniel. Maybe it was the freedom of finally being away from the cruel eyes of her clan. As the flames crackled, Daniel finally spoke again. Lyra, what will you do now? She hesitated. I don't know. I have no clan now. Daniel poked the fire with a stick. You don't need a clan to exist. You can build your own life. Lyra looked at the flames.
But I don't know how.
They always told me I was nothing. Daniel's voice became firm. Listen to me. You are not nothing. You survived years in a place where no one protected you. You endured pain, hunger, fear. That alone makes you stronger than most. Lyra blinked, surprised at the confidence in his tone. Whatever you choose, he continued, I'll teach you. How to fight, how to think, how to survive, how to grow. But the choice must be yours. Lyra stared at him with wide eyes. No one had ever given her a choice. Before she could respond, a sound came from the darkness, a low, deep growl. Lyra froze. Daniel instantly stood up, pulling out his blade. His eyes scanned the bushes. Stay behind me, he whispered. A pair of glowing eyes appeared between the trees. A tall creature stepped into the light. Its fur was black, its claws long, and its teeth sharp. Lyra gasped. A night stalker. Night stalkers hunted alone. Swift, deadly, and fearless. Even whole clans avoided them. The creature snarled, stalking closer. Daniel didn't move. He kept his blade steady, his body perfectly balanced. Lyra gripped the ground. Her heart pounded. Daniel was strong, but the creature was bigger and faster. The night stalker lunged. Daniel stepped aside at the last second, slashing its shoulder. The creature roared. The firelight flashed across its fangs as it turned again. Daniel, Lyra cried. Don't be afraid, he said calmly. Fear makes you blind. The creature attacked again. Daniel dodged a second time, but this time its claws grazed his arm, leaving a red line of blood. Lyra's breath hitched. Her hands trembled, but she knew she had to do something. She grabbed a burning branch from the fire and stepped forward, ignoring her fear. Stay away, she shouted at the creature. The night stalker turned to her, confused by the sudden boldness. Daniel took the opportunity, rushing forward and driving his blade into its side. The creature collapsed with a final, weak growl. Silence filled the clearing. Daniel breathed heavily, but still managed to smile. Good job, Lyra. She stared at him, shocked. I didn't do much. You stood your ground, he answered. That's the first step to becoming strong. Lyra felt warmth spread in her chest. She had been afraid, but she had acted anyway. For the first time, she believed that maybe Daniel was right. Maybe she could grow stronger. They cleaned up the area and returned to the fire. Daniel bandaged his arm casually, as if wounds were normal for him. Lyra watched him with new eyes.
He wasn't just kind.
He was brave.
Skilled. Wise.
A real protector. But he didn't treat her like a burden. He treated her like someone who could stand beside him one day.
Daniel, she said softly.
Yes. I choose to go with you. I want to learn. Daniel smiled. Then, tomorrow we start your training. Lyra nodded with determination. For the first time in her life, her future didn't feel dark or hopeless. It felt bright. And it felt hers. Morning came softly, with golden sunlight pouring between the towering trees. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw Daniel preparing his gear, humming quietly as he checked his blade and tightened the straps on his pack. It felt strange, waking up without fear. No angry voices. No harsh orders. No cold stares from her old clan. Just calm. Just safety. Daniel noticed she was awake and smiled. Good morning, Lyra. Ready for your first lesson? Lyra sat up quickly, brushing leaves from her clothes.
Yes.
I'm ready. Daniel nodded and stood in front of her.
Good.
Today you learned something important. Not fighting. Not running. Something even more useful. Lyra tilted her head. What is it? Daniel raised a finger. Awareness. He pointed at the forest around them. Most people think strength is all about muscles and weapons. But strength begins in the mind. You must learn to notice everything. Every sound. Every movement. Every danger. If you can understand your surroundings, you can survive anywhere. Lyra listened carefully. She had never been taught anything like this before. Daniel continued. Close your eyes. She obeyed. Now tell me, he said. What do you hear? Lyra focused. At first, she only heard her own heartbeat. Then slowly she noticed more. I hear wind, she said softly. Leaves moving. A small river far away. Birds. Good, Daniel said. What else? She listened again. Footsteps, no, not footsteps. Something small moving in the grass. Maybe a lizard. Daniel smiled. Very good. Lyra felt a spark of pride. When she opened her eyes, Daniel nodded with approval. You learn fast. No one ever taught me before, she whispered. Now someone will, he replied. They began walking deeper into the forest. Daniel explained different tracks, different plants, and signs of hidden animals. Lyra memorized everything. Daniel's voice was patient, steady, and clear. He didn't shout at her. He didn't insult her. He never told her she was slow or stupid, the way her old clan always did. Instead, he guided her like a teacher guides a real student. When they reached a stream, Daniel pointed at the water. Next lesson, balance. He stepped onto a narrow fallen tree that stretched over the stream. It was wet and slippery. Lyra's eyes widened. You want me to walk on that? Daniel nodded. Slowly. Step by step. Focus on your center. If you fall, you just get wet. Nothing dangerous. Lyra took a deep breath and put one foot on the log. It wobbled. She froze. It's okay, Daniel said softly. Don't look down. Look where you want to go. She lifted her chin. Her legs shook, but she took one step. Then another. Then another. Halfway across, she stumbled. But Daniel was already there, steadying her with one hand. You did well, he said. Let's try again. They practiced again and again. Lyra fell twice into the water, soaking her clothes, but Daniel only laughed and helped her back up. By the fifth attempt, Lyra made it across without falling. When she reached the other side, she turned to Daniel with bright eyes. I did it. Yes, you did, he said proudly. Lyra felt something inside her grow, a confidence she never knew before. Maybe she truly wasn't weak. They continued their journey, stopping near a ridge overlooking a wide valley. The view was breathtaking, rolling green hills, sparkling streams, and distant mountains. Daniel rested his pack and sat down. Lyra joined him. Daniel, she said after a while, where are we going? Daniel took a sip of water. To a trading town. It's a week from here. We'll buy supplies, maybe find work. There are many places where someone with courage and willingness to learn can grow. Lyra looked at her own hands. Do you really think I can become strong? Daniel turned to her.
Yes.
Because strength is not something you're born with. It's something you build. And you've already started. Lyra smiled, her heart warm. But suddenly the ground shook, lightly, but enough to make her jump. The birds in the trees scattered. Daniel stood up immediately. Stay alert. Lyra followed him as he moved toward the edge of the ridge. Down below, something huge moved through the trees. Branches snapped. Dust rose. Lyra felt fear crawl up her spine. What is that? Daniel narrowed his eyes. A mountain crawler. Mountain crawlers rarely came down from the mountains. They were massive creatures, covered in stone-like scales, with powerful legs and a roar that could shake the ground. Daniel's face hardened. It's heading toward the valley. There are small villages down there. Lyra's heart raced. Will it attack them? Maybe, Daniel said. But we need to warn them. They won't stand a chance without preparation. He adjusted his pack quickly. Lyra, this will be a long and dangerous journey. There will be running, climbing, and maybe fighting. Are you ready? Lyra swallowed her fear. Daniel didn't lie to her. He didn't hide the danger. He didn't protect her by keeping her weak. He treated her like someone capable. Lyra clenched her fists.
Yes.
I'm ready. Daniel smiled. Then stay close. We move fast. As they hurried down the ridge, Lyra felt fear, but also determination. For the first time, danger did not make her feel small. It made her feel alive. Because she was no longer running from life. She was running toward it. The forest shook again as Daniel and Lyra rushed down the ridge. Leaves fluttered from the trees like frightened birds. Even from far away, the distant roar of the mountain crawler rolled across the valley like thunder. Lyra tried to steady her breathing, but her heart felt like it was beating too fast for her body. Daniel moved quickly but carefully, guiding her through thick brush and uneven ground. Stay close, he said. Watch your footing. We can't afford a fall right now. Lyra nodded, pushing herself to keep up. Her legs were tired from the morning training, balance, focus, awareness, but she refused to slow down. Daniel needed her. The villagers in the valley needed her. She would not be useless ever again. A loud crack echoed as one of the crawler's huge, stone-covered feet crushed a tree far below. Lyra swallowed hard. Daniel, are we really going toward that thing? Yes, Daniel said. Because people there could die if no one warns them. Lyra hesitated. But what can we do? We can give them time, he said. Sometimes that's enough. Those words settled something deep inside her. She didn't need to be a warrior yet. She didn't need to defeat monsters. She only needed to help. Even a small chance could save lives. They reached the bottom of the ridge and crossed a narrow stream. The valley opened before them, green fields, simple wooden homes, smoke rising from cooking fires. Children played near a well. Farmers worked in fields, unaware of the huge shadow growing closer behind the trees. Daniel cupped his hands around his mouth. Everyone, evacuate. A mountain crawler is coming. The farmers looked up, confused. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. Others stared blankly, frozen. Then the next roar shook the valley. People dropped their tools. Children screamed. Doors flew open. Panic spread faster than wind. Daniel ran into the center of the village. Move to the upper caves, he shouted.
Now.
Don't pack anything, just run. Lyra stood beside him, her voice trembling at first. Please. You have to go. It's dangerous. She felt strange, standing in front of adults and shouting warnings. In her old clan, no one listened to her. Here she was being heard. An elderly woman grabbed Lyra's sleeve. Is it true? Is a crawler really coming? Lyra nodded firmly.
Yes.
You must hurry. The woman squeezed her hand gratefully and rushed to gather the others. Daniel turned to Lyra.
Good job.
Keep directing them. I'll help the last group pack the injured. Lyra felt a spark of pride. He trusted her to help. He trusted her to lead. People began climbing the rocky path toward the caves, carrying children, helping elders, and supporting injured neighbors. But not everyone moved fast enough. A small boy tripped near the edge of the village, scraping his knee, crying loudly. Lyra ran to him. "It's okay. Come with me." "But my toy," he sobbed. Lyra knelt. "Your life is more important. I'll carry you." She lifted him in her arms and hurried up the path, ignoring the burning in her legs. Safety first, just like Daniel taught her. Behind them, another roar shook the ground, much closer this time. Daniel looked back. Trees toppled as the crawler finally emerged, a massive creature, taller than any building in the village. Its body was covered with stone plates, and its heavy breathing rattled the air. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Lyra."
Run.
Lyra didn't look back. She focused on the cave entrance above them. Villagers shouted encouragement as she climbed. When she reached the top, she handed the child to his mother, who cried in relief. Daniel arrived moments later, guiding two injured men. Once everyone was safely inside the cave, he turned to face the valley. The mountain crawler reached the empty village, smashing a house with one swing of its massive tail. Wood exploded into splinters. But the village was empty now. No screams. No deaths. Lyra stood behind Daniel, breathing hard. "We saved them, didn't we?" Daniel nodded slowly.
Yes.
"We did." The crawler roared again, frustrated by the lack of prey. It stomped around, crushing empty buildings, then slowly wandered toward the mountains again, losing interest. Everyone in the cave stayed silent until the creature disappeared behind the trees. Then a villager whispered, Who saved us?" Daniel turned, expecting fear or suspicion. But instead, dozens of grateful eyes stared at him and Lyra. A young mother stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Thank you. You saved my child." Others joined, bowing, thanking, some even crying. Lyra felt overwhelmed. She had never been thanked before, never appreciated, never seen. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This is just the beginning. You helped save an entire village today." Lyra looked up at him with shining eyes.
I
actually did something important." "You did," Daniel said. "And you will do even more in the future." Lyra felt a new strength growing inside her. Not the kind that comes from fighting, but the kind that comes from helping, learning, and choosing to be brave even when afraid. As the sun set over the quiet valley, Daniel and Lyra prepared to continue their journey. There would be more dangers, more challenges, and more lessons. But Lyra no longer felt like a lost, weak girl. She felt like someone becoming strong, step by step, choice by choice. And she walked forward with courage, knowing she was no longer alone.